Road to Victory, presented by Enterprise. And Dennis Dodd has his new college football hot seat rankings out. A rating of 5 means win or be fired. But we're going to focus on the guys who have taken many roads to victory. Down there at 0, the untouchables, a baker's dozen of them, 13. Now, a couple of coaches that were on this last season are no longer there, including Dabo Swinney at Clemson. No longer untouchable, according to Dennis Dodd, but there you see many of them. Kirby Smart right there with Mike Norvell, a couple of Big 12 coaches, Lance Leipold and Chris Kleiman, that are meeting the media over these couple of days in Las Vegas. So let's dive into it with our man on the scene there in Vegas, Dennis Dodd from Big 12 Media Days. And Dennis, with Nick Saban gone, is Kirby Smart now the most untouchable coach in the country?
Yeah, he is. I mean, Nick was the gold standard. Kirby is now the gold standard. Going for 3 championships in 4 years. You could make a heck of an argument they should have been in last year, but they weren't. He continues to churn out top recruiting classes, quarterbacks that contend for the Heisman, a punishing defense. 2 years ago, that defense was one of the toughest in 20 years, and he's not going anywhere. There's not a place where his name is connected or he might go. I mean, I don't see him as an NFL guy. He's at his alma mater. And even though this is for this year, Chris, this list is almost like these are the forever coaches. Like if they stayed there forever, they could, based on what they've done so far.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, to be clear, the way Dennis does this is untouchable for this season. Doesn't mean they won't be untouchable 2-3 years down the road, unless we're talking about Kirby Smart more than likely. Dennis, if you were dropped in here from 15 years ago, might be surprised to see the next name on this list. It's Lane Kiffin, who went from the Raiders to the Vols to the Trojans within a span of just 3 years. How has he become untouchable at Ole Miss?
He's done things that have been historically unprecedented at Ole Miss. The last 3 years, they have won 29 games. That matches in the 118-year history of Ole Miss football. That's the best. That ties the best 3-year run ever. And the last time it happened was 1962 under the legendary John Vaught. Now, he's in a different era. We know that. He's embraced the transfer portal. He's embraced, the one-time transfer exception. He's got a quarterback, Jackson Dart, formerly of USC, where he used to coach. And everything is clicking right now to the point that they lost Quinshon Judkins to Ohio State in the portal, a former SEC rushing champion, and I don't think they're going to miss a beat there. Ole Miss is one of those teams, Chris, where the playoff is going to meet them in the middle. In other words, if he achieves what they have the last 3 years, forget about winning the SEC. Ole Miss is going to be in the college football playoff, and that's something they've never really done. They've won national championships on paper in the 60s, but they would be playing for a championship, Ole Miss. So I think right now, Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, he's rehabbed his image. He's rehabbed himself, basically, as a guy who was fired on the tarmac at USC. Absolutely untouchable at Ole Miss right now. One
of the untouchables here as we move over to Baton Rouge, staying in the SEC. LSU, not too long ago, pushed out a coach that wasn't even 2 years removed from winning a national championship in Ed Orgeron. Why is Brian Kelly untouchable?
Well, Chris, you said it. You said this is for this year only, but after winning a Heisman Trophy with Jalen Daniels last year and winning 10 games or 11 games, they are definitely in the mix. And they're another team that I would expect to be in playoff competition. He's done what Nick Saban had done in 2003, and that's close the borders and recruiting in the state of LSU, in the state of Louisiana, but also recruiting nationally. He's got help in both lines in recruiting and in the transfer portal. And Brian Kelly is one of those highest paid coaches in the country, and a guy that is an older Lane Kiffin. But there's a standard at LSU, we know, and it's one of those schools where you better win it all every year or you're going to be on the hot seat. Brian Kelly right now, so far, has fulfilled his destiny.
We keep moving west, started in Georgia, went to Mississippi, Louisiana, now to Texas, and Longhorn fans are saying it's about time we have somebody that we believe in as head coach after the failed Charlie Strong experiment, Tom Herman as well. Why is Steve Sarkisian so successful there at Texas?
Well, it was a period of time. He's a guy who is perfect for Texas going into the SEC this year. Obviously, he coached there. He won a national championship there. Again, another guy that rehabbed himself and his image at Alabama under Nick Saban. Nick Saban's been that guy who took fallen coaches for whatever reason, fired, personal problems, and they rehabbed their lives and their careers. Mike Loxley is one. Steve Sarkisian is another. And when he went to Texas 3 years ago, it was typical Texas. They started 5-7. There were questions, and right after that, he landed Quinn Ewers, the transfer from Ohio State, in no short order landed the best offensive line class that there was out there. And you saw it last year by winning 12 games, winning the Big 12 in there last year, and now shepherding the program to the SEC. So he gets it. He's one of those guys, when you're asking him about NIL, the transfer portal, he just says, look, adapt or die. And that's what he says about the SEC. So I think part of this, we always ask how Texas and OU are going to assimilate in the SEC. I think part of this is, how is the SEC going to deal with Texas? Because I think for at least the near future, they're going to contend for championships. Georgia's going to be favored this year. We know that, Chris. But I think Texas is going to be a strong second and definitely in the playoff this year. If you can afford to put Arch Manning and convince Art Manning to sit on the bench in his second season, that's a heck of a coaching job right there. So absolutely untouchable.
All right, let's move on to our first non-SEC guy, and that's kind of, I guess, a moving target with Florida State. Mike Norvell, they're in the ACC right now. He's clearly untouchable at that school, but how precarious is the situation there, thinking if you stay in the ACC or you have to go to the Big 12, do you worry you might lose a guy like Mike Norvell?
Yeah, that's true. And I think that's one of the biggest questions, Chris, in the game going into the 2024 season. What is Florida State's play here? And I started to ask around here at the Big 12 yesterday, what do they want to do? We know they want out of the ACC. And I started asking people, I don't think the SEC wants them. They've already got a team in Florida which would push back hard on that. I was told in the Big Ten they are not desired. They're not an AAU school. Academic-wise, they don't fit. Do they fit in the Big 12? I think their fans would riot if they went to the Big 12. They want to be in the SEC first, Big Ten second. I don't think they're even thinking about the Big 12. But with this private equity money coming in, Chris, there could be enough there to get closer to the SEC and Big Ten. And don't forget, Bobby Bowden, whatever it was, 1992, had a choice between the SEC and ACC to go to a conference. And he picked the ACC because it was easier to win. He would be the dominant team here in the Big 12.
Wow, what could have been, I guess, for Florida State and Florida State fans had they chosen the SEC instead of the ACC. You do have a few Group of 5 coaches on this list, including UTSA's Jeff Traylor, and I totally get why he's untouchable in San Antonio. But how have the Roadrunners been able to keep him as they transition from Conference USA to the American?
Well, Jeff Traylor was an accomplished high school coach in Texas, and one of those guys that knew talent everywhere and knew how to access the talent everywhere. When Mac Brown, one of the first things he did when he got the Texas job was go to the Texas High School Coaches Convention and, ingratiate himself to those coaches. Well, they all knew Jeff Traylor when he got that job, basically a startup program at UTSA, and he filled in with guys that were maybe 3 stars. I don't think they've ever had a 4-star recruit at UTSA, but he can coach the heck out of them. And I'll tell you what, Jeff Traylor's frustrated at where he is, not because it's UTSA, but because his best players are now picked by other schools in the Power 5 in the transfer portal. And he told me last year, he said, I may have to take one of these job offers in the Power 5 if this happens anymore, because he's had big offers from the Power 5 to leave, but he's a very loyal Texan, very loyal coach. I think he's going to be there for a while. That's another school to watch that might be in the running for that Group of 5 spot in the playoff this year.
All right, that's Dennis Dodd from Big 12 Media Days. You see the Colorado logo behind him. Coach Prime was an untouchable last season, but just like Dabo Swinney, Dennis says no longer untouchable going into this season. Here are the coaches on the very top of the hot seat, according to Dennis Dodd. None more so than Sam Pittman at Arkansas at the very top with a hot seat ranking of 5. And then a bunch of coaches at 4 there, including Jacqueline's Billy Napier at Florida.
In all kinds of weather, Chris. That's what we say.
How many wins does he need this year to save his job?
A bowl game.
That's it? Yeah, that might be a tall task looking at that schedule.